I remember the moment everything changed. I twisted my kitchen faucet like I had 1,000 times before. Nothing. Not a drop. At first, I thought maybe the line froze or a pipe burst, but it was a warm morning. Panic crept in. No water means no cooking, no shower, no life. Then came the knock on my door, sharp, impatient, smug. And there she stood, Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, arms crossed, sunglasses perched like she was guarding Buckingham Palace. "It's simple," she said with a fake sweet smile. "You refuse to comply with watering schedule regulations. The board voted to temporarily suspend your water access until you cooperate." I stared, stunned. You can't just shut off someone's water. But she already turned, satisfied with her power, heels clicking dramatically as she walked away. In that moment, I didn't just feel violated, I felt challenged. Water isn't a privilege. It's basic. And she weaponized it. I tried the HOA office, but every email bounced back with automated replies. Every call went to voicemail. My neighbors whispered that Karen had done this before. Anyone who questioned her authority got punished. It wasn't just a rule. It was a message. Obey or suffer. I filled buckets from a public spigot, embarrassed, angry. People stared like I had done something wrong. But I knew this wasn't about rules. It was ego, control. Karen loved control. That night, I sat on my porch and watched Karen patrol like a guard dog, clipboard in hand. She waved at residents, but behind her smile was fear. Fear of losing power. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to break. I was going to expose her, one step at a time, and show the entire neighborhood who she really was. Because when someone tries to drown you in intimidation, the only answer is to rise and make a bigger wave. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced with questions. How far would she go? Did the board really approve it? Or was she acting alone? I searched through the HOA bylaws online by flashlight, highlighting every line about utilities, member rights, emergency authority. And there it was. A clause stating no board member could interrupt essential services without a documented safety, concern and majority consent. She had neither. It wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. My pulse steadied. Now I had leverage. I printed copies, slid them into a folder, and planned my next move. Tomorrow, I wasn't just confronting Karen. I was starting a quiet war, one she would never see coming until it was too late. This wasn't revenge. It was justice, and I was ready for it all tomorrow. I woke up determined. The first stop was Marla's house. She'd always been friendly but reserved. When I told her what happened, her jaw tightened. "She did that to my cousin last year," she said. Connecting stories like that seeded a pattern. I made a list. Dates the water stopped, board member names, any notices, and fragments of overheard conversations. The utility company confirmed. The HOA had administrative access to communal valves, but insisted that any shutdown required written authorization, signed by at least 3 board members. There was no record for my interruption. Relief washed over me. Karen had acted alone. I assembled an evidence kit. Photos of the shut-off valve, screenshots of HOA emails, voicemail recordings, timestamps on bucket deliveries, and short witness statements. Documentation turned my outrage into leverage. I sent a formal review request to the board and copied every homeowner on the listserv. Silence. Door-to-door outreach began. I asked neighbors quietly whether they'd faced fines, inspections at odd hours, or arbitrary enforcement. Hesitation melted into stories. Confiscated garden statues, fences measured at midnight, fines for trivial aesthetic infractions. A retired teacher named Omar handed me his stash of meeting, minutes he'd saved. Minutes that hinted at inconsistent record-keeping and selective enforcement. We organized an urgent community meeting at the center. 30 people showed, more than I expected. We spread the binder on a table like case files. Eyes scanned. Murmurs rose. Marla told her cousin's story. Omar pointed to discrepancies in the minutes. Others added fines and enforcement tales. For the first time, neighbors who had felt powerless realized they were part of a group. A committee formed. 3 homeowners, including me, charged with demanding an independent audit and a temporary injunction to prevent further utility shutdowns. We drafted a petition demanding transparency and safeguards for essential services. A local attorney agreed to review our documentation pro bono and delivered a blunt assessment. The HOA's conduct could be legally challenged, and we had grounds to seek immediate relief if the board refused to act. We circulated the petition, collected signatures, and attached the attorney's letter. The air shifted from anxious to purposeful. Karen's power relied on secrecy and isolation. Our response relied on evidence and solidarity. As we compiled the paperwork and prepared to present our case publicly, I felt nervous but resolute. The plan was to force transparency, protect residents' basic rights, and, if necessary, remove those abusing authority. That night, standing on my porch, I watched lights go out in houses where people were asleep. Unaware their neighbors' resistance might change everything, we had begun a process that would either fix the system or break it open. Either way, we were ready. The day of the HOA board meeting felt like walking into a battlefield, armed only with paperwork and truth. The clubhouse was unusually crowded. Word had spread. People weren't just curious. They were frustrated, fueled by stories that had finally been given a voice. I carried the binder like it was a shield, full of signed petitions, legal notes and testimonies. Karen sat at the head of the table, posture stiff, chin high, eyes sharp with an arrogance she could barely conceal. She didn't know we were coming prepared. Or maybe she did. Maybe that's why her smile trembled at the edges. The meeting began with the usual script until I raised my hand. Calm voice, steady breathing. Before we proceed, we need to address an illegal utility. Shut-off performed. Without board consent. A ripple of whispers spread. Karen cut in sharply. This is inappropriate. You're out of order. But one of the other board members, Mr. Caldwell, looked uneasy. Let them speak, he said. That moment, that tiny fracture in her control, was the first crack. I slid printed bylaw sections across the table, highlighted lines glowing under fluorescent lights. I read aloud the clause, forbidding essential service, interruption, without documented emergency, and majority vote. Eyes shifted toward Karen. She tapped her pen, jaw tight. We had grounds, she insisted, but her voice trembled. I pushed forward, utility company confirmation, dated emails, the board's lack of approval. Then the signatures, page after page. Neighbors tired of being bullied into silence. One board member, Susan, spoke first. Karen, did you authorize this alone? Karen didn't answer. Her silence was louder than her usual tirades. The room tensed. Another neighbor stood and described Karen's behavior. Late-night inspections, intimidation, arbitrary fines. Others followed, voices steady but emotional. It was no longer just my fight. It was a community demanding accountability. Karen snapped. You're all blowing things out of proportion. But authority only works when people believe in it. And today, nobody did. The attorney's letter was my final card. I slid it forward, the weight of legal consequence landing with force. If this board doesn't address this, we pursue formal legal action and request an immediate injunction. The board exchanged glances. Caldwell cleared his throat. We will hold an emergency vote on disciplinary action and oversight rules. Karen's chair scraped as she stood, face flushed, choking on disbelief. She wasn't in control anymore. The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was liberation. We had shifted the balance, not with shouting, but with unity, proof, and unshakable resolve. And as Karen stormed out, every eye watched her, not with fear, but with recognition that her reign had cracked. The morning after the board meeting felt strangely quiet, as if the neighborhood was holding its breath. Had we really done it? Had we really shifted power away from the woman who thought she owned every inch of this community? My phone buzzed early. A message from Susan, one of the board members. Emergency vote concluded. Majority decision. Karen removed as HOA president effective immediately. Water access to be restored today. I stared at the screen, overwhelmed. After days of humiliation, buckets, meetings, whispered conversations in driveways. Justice had arrived not with drama, but with a single, calm text. I went outside just as the maintenance guy turned the valve. A hiss. Then the steady hum of pressure building. I rushed inside and twisted the faucet. Water burst out, clear, strong, glorious. For the first time in days, I laughed. Not the polite kind, the relieved, victorious kind you feel deep in your chest. Word spread fast. Neighbors came out onto their lawns, knocking on doors, exchanging relieved glances that said, "We're free now." Karen's SUV rolled past, slower than usual. No music, no confidence. She kept her sunglasses on, but nothing could hide the collapse behind them. She avoided eye contact. Power had left her, and without it, she was just another resident. No longer feared, no longer followed. A dethroned monarch in a suburban palace, she once ruled with petty tyranny. Later that afternoon, the board held a community session. Caldwell spoke first, promising new oversight, transparency, and a revision of enforcement policies. Essential services, he declared, would never again be weaponized against residents. We voted in a temporary committee to help guide policy reforms, including me, Omar, and Marla. The room felt different. Open, equal, hopeful. People asked questions, shared ideas, even laughed. The atmosphere of fear had cracked wide open, replaced with something powerful. Participation. As the sun set, I stood outside sipping cold water from a glass I appreciated more than ever. This whole ordeal wasn't just about water. It was about dignity, about community, about refusing to let one person's ego dictate everyone's life. A once divided neighborhood now felt connected, not because of rules, but because of action. People who barely nodded before were now waving, talking, planning. Karen tried to cut me off to control me, but I turned the board and the whole neighborhood against corruption instead. Sometimes the smallest battle, like a faucet gone dry, sparks the biggest change. And in the end, Karen didn't just lose her title. She lost her grip, her secrecy, her fear-based power. Me? I gained something better. A voice, a community, and a reminder that even in the quietest streets, resistance can roar. And before we wrap up, if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me what you would do in this situation. Your support helps me bring more wild HOA and Karen stories to life. And trust me, you don't want to miss the next one.